Hello everyone, this is Jotto, and welcome back to the second part of the Goblins and Gnomes set review. And it took us a couple of days to get this actually going, but the intent is to finish the rest of the set review today.
Yeah, we're settled in. I've got my warm Christmas socks on because we're going to be here for a while.
Yeah, even got the map of the world behind you there. But hopefully we don't have to go all the way around it to actually finish this video off. So we did 0 to 3 last time, so we're doing the rest of the neutrals in this video, and then we're going to split up the classes into the rest of them. So now, are you ready, Dapper?
I was born ready.
Oh jeez. Anyway, so we're starting with the Enhanco Mechano. 4 mana, 3/2 epic mech. Battlecry, give your other minions Wind Fury Taunt and or Divine Shield at random. Keep in mind that I have actually played with this in Arena, and it gives different rolls to each one. So you can get Divine Shield, Taunt, and Wind Fury if you have 3 mechs, for example. Or if you have 3 guys, for example.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have now had a chance to play with these cards, so we can kind of get a bit more of a feel for how good they are. And I think this card is a bit better than I originally rated it when we talked about when the cards were first spoiled.
Yeah, in Arena this actually has been doing some pretty decent work.
So, if you give a bunch of you guys Divine Shield, you can get some pretty sick trades. The Wind Fury can get ridiculous pretty fast.
Taunt is also pretty useful, but probably the worst of the.
Yeah, but the problem with this card is you can kind of compare it to Defender of Argus, in that it rewards you for having a big board because you get to make good trades. The problem is that the kind of the while the extreme scenario where you have like 4 guys and you play the Enhanco Mechano and just destroy them is really good.
The problem is it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, a lot of the time it doesn't work that way. If you're not really far ahead on the board, then the Enhanco Mechano is just this kind of crappy 3/2.
Yeah, from what I've seen of it in Arena, I actually think it constructed it will only ever be a one-of, and it'll only ever be a one-of in the decks that have reliably massive board positions. Because you can't really justify it over Defender if you only have 2 minions.
Yeah, the other problem is it's kind of unreliable. So sometimes you'll desperately need the Divine Shield to get a good trade, but then it will give all your guys Taunt instead. And so I've heard some people say that this will be good in Handlock because you can play a Mountain Giant and then give it Wind Fury or Divine Shield or Taunt, and all of them are good. But the problem is that sometimes you need Taunt for
a giant, and then you wish
prevent yourself
you
from
had
dying.
Defender of Argus in your hand.
And then you wish you had Defender of Argus. When you give Divine Shield to your Ancient Watcher, it's a bit lackluster. Or Wind Fury.
It feels worse than Defender, and it feels worse than what's it called? Dark Iron Dwarf, especially in Arena. Dark Iron is relevant.
Yeah, would you play this over Dark Iron and Zoo? Probably not. Although it isn't mech, which is
that could be relevant. Although I will say in Arena the reason this has been okay is partly because epics are terrible. Usually in Arena.
That's true.
There's some really bad ones. So Enhanco Mechano is a playable one that actually doesn't work every so often. So it's definitely pickable over a lot of the absolute trash you get as far as epics goes. But Defender of Argus and Dark Iron Dwarf are slightly more competitive rarities when it comes to Arena staples.
And it's just hard to evaluate how good this guy's going to be.
Yeah,
the other thing in Handlock is, so a lot of the value of Defender of Argus is that you can get your Azure Drake to get your Twilight Drake to kill a Sludge Belcher with the extra attack buff.
Or Loetheb.
Or Loetheb.
So it's pretty relevant.
So yeah, this card is just a bit kind of unreliable.
Yep.
That's the main problem.
The next card is Jeeves himself, which is a 4 mana 1/4 mech. At the end of each player's turn, that player draws until they have 3 cards. I have had the pleasure of not playing with, but playing against this in Arena, and I made the
I
most
don't
of
believe
it.
I have, sir.
It was a lot of fun, actually, on my end of things. Because, alright, basically the way Jeeves tends to work is that at the end of every turn you draw until you have 3. So against control decks it's amazing, which is why I actually think that it will probably see a decent amount of play in tournaments where you can have multiple classes and you don't need to play every single deck you have, because then Jeeves is just like, it just breaks control decks without if you were playing aggro. But in Arena, what happened was I was playing as a mage, he played Jeeves, as we have Dapper's phone going on in the background, but he played Jeeves, and he drew 3, and I was like, sure. I dumped my entire hand, drew 3. He dumped his hand, but one of them was an Acolyte of Pain. So I just pinged it 3 times, and he fatigued himself, and I had like a Stormer champion, I drew off the Jeeves and killed him.
Okay.
So in Arena, all this does is accelerate the game.
Yeah, I mean, in Arena, the problem is that you can't empty your hand fast enough. But in Constructed, you get to build a deck where you can empty your hand really quickly.
Yeah, you can. If you play against another guy who's running a similar deck.
This effect is theoretically symmetrical. But because you get to draw the cards first, and then if they leave the Jeeves up to get the draws themselves, then you will also get to have another round of draws from Jeeves.
And then it's basically who blinks first.
So
that's like how this turns out.
Yeah, it's not really a symmetrical effect in practice. It's actually really good for you. And being able to refill your hand after you've emptied your hand is really excellent. The problem that, say, Divine Favor Paladin decks had is, and I talked about this in the other video, that they would play all these trashy minions, and then if you don't draw Divine Favor to refill your hand once you've played them all, then you're stuck with an empty hand and you lose. And Jeeves is another way to make that strategy a bit more consistent. It's a mech, so you can play it for cheaper after you dump your hand with Mech Warper and refill. The question is what decks this card will be played in. So I already talked about the Paladin, where if that deck is good, it will definitely be a staple.
I will say, as I said, like if you're playing an aggro deck and it's designed to eat control decks, it's kind of like how duplicate-based mages have sometimes been tweaked to the point when they hunt warriors as being like their actual thing, and that's because you just have like minion draw essentially. Whereas Jeeves is very good against control because they get no benefit. The problem is in aggro mirror matches. This is why on ladder it's super risky to run this, because when I was playing against it, when I played with it a few times, I played against it a few times, and if you're both running similar speed decks, which in Arena you're both running similar speed decks usually, and in Constructed if you're playing a aggro deck it's going to be similar. What Jeeves ended up doing was actually just accelerating the game. Like no one was getting ahead, it just made the game like triple in speed.
Right.
So the game ended really fast.
But like, okay, so suppose we're talking about the Zoom mirror. Then you get to a certain point in the game where you're both live tapping every turn and still not spending all of your mana, and that's the point in the game where you can play Jeeves and draw 3 cards. And yes, they're the person that yes, they also get to draw cards on their turn, but you get to be the guy who's the first one to spend their turn playing 3 minions and not tapping. And then you'll probably win the game because of that.
Problem is you just top decked and played a 1/4.
That's true, and it is a bit of an issue.
I mean, it just like the reason I don't like Jeeves as a card really, because he creates a game state which is like who blinks first. Because at some point, because you could build a deck that basically if you want to make Jeeves to work for you, and there is a way of doing it. If you want to make Jeeves to work for you, you have to run a deck that utilizes the 3 cards better than other decks can that are similar speed. So you want to be playing a deck that has a bunch of 1-drops and 2-drops that you can just empty your hand immediately and do it over and over and over again. Because otherwise, if you're running a slightly slower deck and you face against one of those decks, you actually help them. So you've got to make sure that you be careful which kind of decks you run Jeeves in, I think is going to be the main thing about this.
I mean, you could even run this card in like... so another way to think about this card is you can compare it to Sprint. And if you think about the kind of old style pre-Naxxramas tempo rogue decks that were around, where you play a bunch of kind of smallish mid-range guys and you have efficient stuff like backstab and eviscerate, and then on turn 7 or turn 9 you refill your hand with eviscerate, with sprint and sorry, then you kind of get enough gas to kind of for that final push to finish your opponent off.
Yeah.
And Jeeves could work in a deck like that, or for example, Shaman, the situation that you get to in control matchups where your hand is full of lightning bolts on turn
No.
9.
There's Neptulon for that. We'll get to him eventually.
That's very true. So there's lots of interesting applications for this card. I think it will be really good.
I think he'll be good. It's a question of how good he is and where he's good. I think that's the main question.
Yeah.
And there are going to be moments when this screws you over, but that's the penalty of playing an effect this powerful, is it has to be pseudo-symmetrical. It's kind of like Mechanical Yeti. When we get to him, the effect looks symmetrical, but it isn't quite.
Well, I mean, with Mechanical Yeti, the effect is pretty symmetrical.
Well, I mean, there is a slight initiative difference, though, but not as big. It's not as much of an extreme as it is with Jeeves. But anyway. Piloted Shredder, 4 mana, 4/3, common, Death Rattle. Summon a 2-cost minion, and it's a mech. This has been the king of arena for me.
This card, I mean, as I've always said, this card is really, really excellent.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's like, so I mean, you can the obvious comparison is to the Yeti.
Harvest Golem,
and the question is whether you want to play this card in your 4-drop slot or you play Mechanical Yeti, which is basic. So, and it's pretty clear that the Shredder is better than a 4/5. So you can have the downside that the second half could be a Captain's Parrot or a Novice Engineer, but equally it could be
I've got
a Haunted Creeper or a Millhouse
3 times off this.
And
it's been ridiculous.
Over the long run, it's probably going to average out to be about a 3/2.
It's about 5 stat total in average, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if you compare when you trade Yeti into a 3/2 or Shredder into a 3/2, then the Yeti that's left over is a 4/2, which is not that much better than the average drop from Piloted Shredder. But the benefit of the Shredder is that it can't be overkilled, so it's much better than Yeti against Flame Strike or Kill Command or any number of cards. The other thing is that the randomness of Piloted Shredder can kind of help you because, as I'm sure people will have realised when it's been played against them in Arena over the last couple of days,
so hard to play around
because you don't know what's going to come out of it. You don't know if you can kill the second half efficiently. So the strategy against Harvest Golem is usually to ignore it until you have an efficient way to deal with both halves. And then you can kill it.
But Piloted Shredder's a 4/3. It's kind of.
But with Piloted Shredder, even if you have a good way to kill the first half, you don't know whether or not you're going to have a good way to kill the second half.
Well,
and if you do, kill the first half, then you kind of wasted that kind of tempo because their board position isn't that much worse if you can't kill the second half.
It's the best 4 mana 4/3 I think they've ever made, because 4 mana 4/3s are generally pretty bad because they die to pretty much everything.
Right. But this guy basically does have 5 health.
Pretty much. He has 5 health or possibly 6 depending on how much attack the 2-drop has. And there are some 2-drops which are just ridiculous. Like there was a One-Eyed Cheat, the new rogue card. It's a 4/1. Actually came out of one that I had, and I was playing against a mage, but he already used his hero power to kill the Piloted Shredder efficiently. So he actually couldn't use it. I ended up just not losing attack. It was basically like a straight up 4 mana Harvest Golem at that point.
Yeah, so
really good.
I mean, so when we were discussing in the previous round of in the very first round of spoilers whether Piloted Shredder is best than Yeti, we had the additional point that even if you aren't sure about whether the body is better than a 4/5, it's a mech and it has Death Rattle.
Turns out that's not a.
That's not really a relevant concern anymore, so I don't get to have that kind of little
It's better than organic Yeti.
racing point. And I think it's definitely better than Mechanical Yeti as well.
That's what we're calling it from now on. Organic Yeti and then Mech Yeti.
There are also the beautiful scenarios where your opponent kills the Shredder and then the rest of their turn gets ruined by a Mana Wraith or a, Nerebar Weblord or an
I got
unstable.
a Trogg off this and he had to play another spell. And ended up getting a 3/3 and trading with something. I've played a lot of Arena over the past couple of days, so I've drafted Power to Shredder I think 8 or 9 times at this point. It's a common, so you see it a lot, and I think it is better than Mechanical Yeti and Normal Yeti, but they're like the trio of ridiculous 4-drops you want in Arena at this point. Common. But anyway, as far as Constructed goes, we'll have to see. I'm pretty sure he'll see some play though.
Yeah, so I mean, buffs Undertaker, you can play with Mech War, but there's so many good applications for this card.
It's a very good card.
It's likely to see play in every deck that plays Yeti now, and many more besides. You'll probably see it in Zoo. If the Zoo runs Mechs, you'll probably see it in Shaman.
Yeah, and Shaman is really good because you have Flame Tongue Totem as well, so even if the 2-drop isn't that fantastic.
Yeah, it's just an incredibly strong card on turn 4, and sometimes you can play it on turn 3.
And it's also good late game. That's rare that's pretty rare for something of 4 or less mana, is that it's really good late game because it's sticky, doesn't just immediately die, and it's...
Yeah, it's much harder to kill efficiently in the late game than Yeti is.
Exactly. Turn away. Power to Shredder, good card. Probably one of the best commons in the set. The best of the Shredders. There are 3 Shredders. This is the best of the Shredders.
Definitely the best of the Shredders.
The cheapest is in fact the best. But anyway, on to the Burly Rockjaw Trogg. That's a mouthful. 4 mana, 3/5. Common. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, gain 2 attack. So it has the Trogg effect. I have been playing with this a decent amount recently because of the arena stuff, and quite frankly, it has been underwhelming. Incredibly underwhelming, actually.
Well, I mean,
3/5.
There's only so underwhelming that a 3/5 for 4 can be.
Yeah, the effect just never happens.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with the effect is that if your opponent really desperately wants to play a spell when Burly Rockjaw Trogg is on the board, the spell they want to play is probably something that kills the Trogg.
Because if you play it on turn 4, it's the biggest thing on the board, so the removal spell is going towards the Trogg. And if you play it later in the game, I don't care if you have a 3/5.
Right.
So the effect doesn't do anything.
Yeah. So something that I didn't know the other day when we were talking about the smallest Trogg is that they kind of have synergy with the taunt. So sometimes you want to use a spell to get rid of a taunt so that you can make a favorable trade with the Trogg. And you can't because you'll buff the attack. There's a few different scenarios where you can get good value out of this Trogg. But is it worth running over Yeti, Shredder, or Tazdingo?
Oh.
Not really. And in construction, it has to compete with those cards.
You're lagging a bit.
Am I?
Yeah, just a little bit. The robot voice there for a second. But anyway, let's just hope it clears up. But
let me know if there are any more problems.
Yeah, but anyway, the main thing about Rockjaw Trogg is that a lot of the time his effect doesn't trigger. And if it doesn't trigger, he's just worse than Senjin and Jilin and things like that. But when it does trigger, he's not that much better. So it's just a case of what's his best, what's his worst, and how often does it trigger is something we've come back on a lot over the 3-drops especially. And quite frankly, the upside is just, I would never pick this over a Yeti or a Senjin or anything. Because the upside is just not really that relevant most of the time. Just, it doesn't happen that often.
Yeah.
So, I don't really like it. And in Constructed, don't go anywhere near the thing. That's way better 4-drops. Like, it's just not a good card. It's supposed to kind of bulk up Arena a bit in terms of commons. But it's not a very good 4-drop. It's just kind of an okay 4-drop. Decent stats. But anyway, on to the Sludge Belcher comparison of this set. It is a 4 mana 2/5. Mech with Taunt, can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. Arcane Nullifier, X21. Now the reason I say this is the Sludge Vulture set is because everyone's being very quiet about this card because no one can figure out whether it's good or not, and we're going to have to see, and no one wants to be horribly wrong.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to put my credibility on the line. I'm going to risk having this clip played back to me over and over and over. But I don't think this card's very good. Like, this card would have been amazing back in the days of old school Miracle Rogue, where the plan was to kill you with Leroy. And
I just can't get past it.
they have absolutely no way of getting rid of it. They don't have the board. And you can kind of see the appeal of a card like this because if you're sick of your Senjin getting kill commanded,
it's very good against Hunter, this thing. That's true.
Yeah, this card might be quite attractive. But the problem is that 2 attack is really, really bad. The difference... So, one of the reasons that Senjin is quite good is because the difference between 3 and 4 attack is not that huge. 3 is enough to... or at least has historically been enough to kill pretty much every minion that comes down before it. Whereas
2 doesn't really kill 3.
Arcane Nullifier fails to kill Harvest Golem. It fails to kill buffed Undertakers.
It trades with 3/4s.
Right. And so chances are you're just going to play this card and then it's going to get killed quite efficiently. And they're going to have not that much left on them. Not that much less on the board than they did when you play it, and then they're going to play some more stuff. And
it doesn't kill Zombie Chow, it doesn't kill Mech Warper, it doesn't kill a lot of 2-drops actually.
Right, which is a really big problem.
I mean, I could definitely see it somewhere, but I don't know. 2/5 just seems like 2/5 has historically never been that good as stats for any card.
So one of the reasons that cards with high health and low attack are good is that it doesn't matter how high your health, how high your attack is, if you get killed by a Frostbolt.
Or by a hero power in the case of Magma Rager.
Right, exactly. But because it's spell-proof, it kind of negates the advantage of that somewhat.
I think it would be much better as a 3/4, to be honest.
I mean, it would still be awful as a 3/4.
It's like, how do you distribute these stats to make it good?
You're paying too much for the spell-proof from the taunt, I think.
Maybe.
So, I mean, it's possible that there will be a deck in the future that's, a bit like old Miracle Rogue, where you want to play this card.
And this will nullify the Arcane, if you will.
If there's tons and tons and tons of face hunters with Arcane Golem and stuff, then maybe
if there's a bunch of face hunters, then I could see this. But that's more of a metagame choice as opposed to just a good card.
But yeah, I think you'll probably rather have Senjin.
In Arena, it's been okay, but it kind of fits into the category of pickable but not amazing. So
yeah,
it's been fine. Kezan Mystic, 4 mana, 4/3, rare, battlecry, take control of a random enemy secret. This is supposed to replace Flare, and it is hilarious what this does to mages especially.
Yeah, this card is really so when you get the effect of this card off, it's obviously amazing. You get a huge amount of value because you take the secret away from them and you get it for yourself, and it's pretty much free.
It's basically a 3-for-1 if you get the secret trick.
Yeah. And it also comes at quite a convenient point on the curve because turn 4 is about when their mad scientist dies, and they get that secret, and then you can steal the secret.
Yeah,
if it's a mirror entity, it doesn't go off.
It's only a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
So you can steal the mirror entity before it triggers. You can steal the Hunter's traps. You can steal the ice block against Freeze Mage.
Duplicate.
Yeah, if you duplicate this, that's pretty disgusting. On the other hand, so that's what happens in two
Matchup
of the
versus
9
7, yeah.
matchups.
And
But
you
in
don't
the other
count
7,
Paladin in there because they don't
yeah,
play
we're not
secrets.
counting Paladin because it's quite unlikely that Paladin will run secrets. In the other 7 matchups, you put a 4-mana 4/3 in your deck.
Yep.
And the question is whether Kezan Mystic will be so good against Hunter and Mage that it will be worth playing a 4-mana 4/3 in all the other matchups. And it probably won't be. I mean, you can compare it to Harrison Jones, where you have to play a 5-mana 5/4 in a lot of matchups. But Harrison Jones is useful in a lot more matchups. It's more impactful because, like, against Shaman's Doomhammer, basically wins you the game. And the other thing is that while Harrison's a 5/4, which is like a really
5/4
bad
is
size,
more relevant than a 4/3 late in the game as the other.
one of the reasons that 4 health minions are so bad is that they die to like True Silver Champion and Deathblade. But those are the matchups in which Harrison is at its best. And against say Druid, where Harrison's pretty useless, it's still going to eat like a swipe or trade with a Yeti or something. Whereas, you know, if all Kezan Mystic's job is in a matchup is to play 4 mana to eat the damage from Fire Elemental, you're going to lose that game. And Kezan Mystic is going to lose you a lot of games because it was just so bad.
If you play against a Shaman, you'll literally see him mouse over his entire hand trying to pick the best way of killing it.
Yeah, your 4-mana guy does a Fire War Axe, it dies to... So, basically, secret-based decks would have to be a huge proportion of the meta for this card to be worth playing.
Like,
so while it's
30%.
nice to have in the game...
it would have to be really high. I think it could definitely... Like, if it's a really important deck in the metagame, I could definitely see... Especially in tournaments, I could see some sort of counter deck being run, where it's like the theory is you don't ban it, and then you just open up with this double Kezan Mystic deck and you wreck it.
Yeah, but then they might open up with one of their other decks.
And then you're screwed. But yeah. I don't know. It's weird. It's a powerful effect if you get it off. It's not really that good if you don't. In Arena, it's been okay, because when you get it off, it's amazing. When you don't, 4/3 for 4 is not good, but it's playable. So, but in Constructed, I don't really see it that much.
Yeah.
It's a really bad palette to Shredder if you play it without stealing.
Well, yeah.
Put those two next to each other.
So it's difficult to see a scenario in which you'd want to play this card in Constructed, but it's possible.
Anyway, onto the Mechanical Yeti. The Mechanical Yeti is Yeti. It's a 4-mana 4/5, and it is a common. It is a mech, and it has Death Rattle. Give each player a spare part. First of all, does anyone have an argument as to why this is not power creep?
No, I mean, this is pretty much strictly better than a Yeti, because the Death Rattle is symmetric and has a pretty small impact on the game. Both players getting a spare part is likely to be balanced good for both people. But it buffs Undertaker. You can play with Mechwarper. It's possible that I was trying to think of a scenario in which you might want to play Organic Yeti in your deck.
And Scarlet Purifier. That's where I started and stopped.
Yeah. I think maybe if you were worried that the other decks in the metagame were able to use the spare part better than you, if everyone's playing Violet Teacher, and you're not, then maybe...
But the better question at that point is, why are you running a Yeti in your deck if you don't have the mech synergies?
So, yes, Organic Yeti is...
a lot of people have come up saying, but the spare part might screw you over. And I'm just like, but wait a second, in Constructed, you're only going to have a Yeti in your deck if it's actually worth playing. And Cho and Yeti, hate to break it to people who have been on the Yeti train for the last 6 months or something, but I'm pretty sure it's dying off.
Yeah. And so we talked about with Jeeves how the Death Rattle wasn't really symmetric because you get to use the cards first.
This isn't really,
and if your opponent kills the Yeti,
they have to invest.
They are going to be the one
that
gets to use the spare part first.
The problem is that whenever I've played this in Arena, is that it's a 4/5. So if you play it on curve, your opponent usually has to play an extra card to kill it, and then they don't have the ability to use the spare part properly, and then
Yeah,
you
and
get it
because
immediately.
the spare parts are so situational, they're usually going to sit in your hand for a few turns anyway.
Yep.
Um,
So it is almost
until you find a good way to use it.
symmetrical.
I mean, the more pertinent question is this card better than Piloted Shredder? And
I think the answer is no.
for all the reasons that we talked about when we were talking about Piloted Shredder, it's quite unlikely that you'd want to play this card over Piloted Shredder.
There is one class I could see an argument for it, though. Priest.
Right, because...
high base health, and with upgraded Repair Bot, it goes to 9.
That's a very good point. And in Priest, definitely. For the same reason that Spider Tank is better than the Harvest Goblin.
In Priest.
You might see the Mechanical Yeti over regular Yeti.
Maybe. Well, I mean, yeah, you won't see Chillwind again. I don't think you'll see Chillwind again.
That we've been starting to see Yeti in... there was that Impact Hunter deck that played Yeti because it wanted a kind of non-situational, strong turn 4 drop.
Why isn't Yeti a beast? That's a
which
random
Hunters typically lack.
Why isn't it a beast? Mechanical Yeti's a mech, so why not just make them side grades? Make the original one a beast. I mean, Lost Tallstrider, which we'll get to in a bit, is a reverse Yeti. It's a 5/4, and that's a beast.
So you might want to run Lost Tallstrider and Hunter, or you might want to run Piloted Shredder or Mechanical Yeti, just because they activate your Undertaker.
Yep. So.
Yeah. In conclusion, Mechanical Yeti, very good card, better than original Yeti, probably worse than Piloted Shredder. And for that reason, unless you want to play 3 Yetis for some reason, which you might in a
Yeti
particular
deck.
sort of
you need
druid
Ancient
deck.
Watchers, you need Dark Skill Healers, you need like 4 Yetis, and then
play Sunwalker and
you play Sunwalker. So you play like the Divine Shield Yeti, and then you've got Cairn, which is the pregnant Yeti. Like you can make a Yeti deck now. That's a thing. But the card is amazing in Arena, like a normal Yeti. It's good. It's basically a Yeti that's better, but the reason why it's a bit sketchy and constructed is because of this little Piloted Shredder down here, which is just ridiculous. So we're not really saying the card is bad. It's just there's not really much to talk about when it comes to a Yeti.
Yeah, it's just beef.
It's beef, good for the cost.
5 health is good and likely to still be really good after GVG.
Yep. So anyway, onto the Mini Mage, which is not very small actually. 4 mana, 4/1, epic with stealth and spell damage 1. I played against this in Arena once. It killed me, but that's partly because it was really late in the game and I had 2 life. So I'm not exactly sure how good this is in that format. In Constructed, it is miserably bad.
Yeah, so you can compare this card to Ogre Magi, which is a bad card. And Ogre Magi has 3 more health in exchange for not having stealth.
Is stealth really worth that much?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and stealth is really good on a 4 mana 4 on a 4/1 with spell damage, right? So you get to protect your spell damage, and you get to wait until you have the perfect opportunity to trade your 4/1 off. So I actually drafted this in a Shaman deck
How'd it go?
when it was up against some other bad epics like Farsight or something, and I had a lot of spells, and it was actually pretty good in Arena for an Arena card.
It's like Jungle Panther, basically.
Part of the reason for that is that there's a lot less AoE in Arena. In Constructed, this card is utterly awful. It's one of the worst cards in the set. You'll never see it.
Yeah, it's a bad card. Anyway, Lost Tallstrider, the reverse Yeti, if you will, apart from the fact it's a chicken. Anyway, 4 mana 5/4, common beast. Now, before we get into any remote constructed thing, in Arena, not as good as Yeti, but still fairly okay. We agreed on that?
Yeah, right. 5/4 is definitely worse than 4/5, but
still
because
okay.
there's so many things that do 4 damage.
But it's still fine.
But it's still fine.
As far as constructed goes, maybe Hunter. Or maybe a Druid of the Fang deck.
Well, yeah, maybe in your Druid of the Fang deck, if you really need the beast, you will play this. Maybe, with Hunter, you have the kind of Call Pet synergy where you can play this card for free on turn 2.
Turn 2.
Which is like Innovate Yeti that doesn't cost you a card. And it gives you that kind of extra density of decent Call Pet draws in your deck that you need to be able to play Call Pet.
That's true.
Whether that will be good enough or not remains to be seen. I suspect not, but
A couple
being
of
able
sets
to...
from now, Cool Pet will be broken eventually. Mark my words. It will eventually be broken when there's enough good beasts in the game.
Maybe.
But for now...
But yeah, I mean, like, even in Hunter, like a regular Hunter deck, I think I'd rather play Piloted Shredder than this. Because Piloted Shredder activates your Undertaker. And
it's also just more
the
value.
benefit of being a beast is that you can activate Kill Command and that you can be Houndmastered. But this card isn't that good to Houndmaster, and it's really expensive for activating Kill Command with. So is it worth it being a 5/4 rather than...
There's a better beast coming up for that deck, which we'll get to in Hunter. But yeah, Tallstrider, not fantastic in Constructed, but very good in Arena though.
Yeah.
Speaking of good in Arena, Bomb Lobber, 5 mana 3/3 rare. Battlecry, deal 4 damage to a random enemy minion. If you see this in Arena, pick it. Just do it. It's ridiculous.
This card is really
something. Good. I got 2 of them, and every single time I drew them, they were insane. Like
so you can kind of compare it to an Argent Commander.
That costs 1 less and has a better body.
The cost one less. It has a better body for the penalty of it being random, which a lot of the time you can play around.
Most of the time, in my experience,
and make sure that you hit
have 1 guy on the board.
At least a reasonable target. So one of the so I said in my original review of this card that it was you're not going to want to play this card over one of the really good 5-drops in Constructed right now, like Sludge Belcher or Spectral Knight. But in the right metagame, where there's a lot of Azure Drakes and stuff hanging around that you can kill on turn 5, it would be really, really good. And certainly there are... and that's one of the reasons that it's better in Arena, because in Arena there are lots of minions that are just like vanilla beef, and you can kill them with a 4 damage hit and get loads of value. But in Constructed, the board tends to be clogged up with a bunch of Haunted Creepers and Harvest Golems, and
it gets awkward.
I mean, one of the reasons that Argent Commander isn't good anymore, and it used to be, is because everyone's 5-drop of choice used to be Azure Drake, and now it's Sludge Belcher. And Bomb Lobber suffers from the same problem.
Is very good against one of these and very bad against the other.
Yeah.
Bomb Lobber is the same.
Suffers the same problem that you don't really want to play this into Piloted Shredder or Sludge Belcher or
Actually, Piloted Shredder is not bad because then you 1-for-1.
Yeah, it's just not awful. But yeah. The point is, in Constructed, minions tend to be really sticky, and so you're much less likely to get good value out of this card.
If Piloted Sky Golem becomes a thing, maybe. That still seems like a stretch, because even then it wouldn't be like a one-off, and there's still Belchers. And I actually think Bomb Lobber, at least for now, is going to stick to his Arena decks, and he's going to completely own that format. Because I actually managed to build a deck with nothing above 5 cost, and I had no problems dealing with Boulder Fist Ogres or anything, because you just use Bomb Lobber to match up the damage. And it was... Yeah. It was pretty crazy. You can actually build a tempo deck in Arena that does not really have late game, and you just use Bomb Lobbers to make up the extra damage. So I think he's sticking to Arena, but he's going to be very good in that format.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those cards that's like not quite good enough to... It's good, but it's not quite good enough to compete with the generically good Constructed cards, and it doesn't have like a specific niche to fit in like a particular deck. It's just generically good.
Value.
But it's not quite enough value to be used in Constructed.
Onto the Salty Dog. Now, why is he salty? Because he's bad. He's a 5 mana 7/4 pirate common.
I can't believe Blizzard would make this card. I hate this game.
What? Okay.
PJ Salt.
Right. Okay. Anyway, so he is in fact the Salty Dog. He is very, very bad and Constructed. In Arena, I have drafted him twice. He has not been horrible, but I have never really enjoyed playing him.
So, 7/4 is an awful stat distribution.
We saw this with Stalag.
Yeah. The fact that you sometimes had to play Stalag as a 7/4 and would never draw the 4/7 Death Rattle to summon an 11/11 that was now left in the deck is enough to make that combo bad. So that suggests that this card is also bad, and it's way too easy to just die for cheap, and
I don't think we need to
like
talk about
even
this
in a
too much.
pirate deck
It's just
where
bad.
you're
Even
feeding
in
off the
pirates.
synergy, you've got like you want cheap minions so that you can activate your ship's cannon and get like useful buffs with your South Sea Captain, and this card is so bad that I don't think I would play it even in a pirate deck.
And your opponent's like, thank you for the big game hunter target. I was waiting for one of those.
Yeah, that's another point.
The best thing is that they play their big game hunter and it's like, haha, I have my salty dog. Oh wait, they trade. It's just a horrible feeling.
Yeah, this card is pretty horrendous.
It's bad. It's not like worst card in the set material because it's still okay in Arena. It's meh. But anyway, it's just not good. So on to Antique Healbot, 5 mana 3/3 mech battlecry, restore 8 life to your hero. This has been okay in Arena in 2 classes in my opinion. Well, 3. Rogue, Warlock, and Shaman, because all 3 of these classes have a habit of being very bad at healing themselves and dealing horrific amounts of damage to themselves over a game.
Right, so you have the problem that, it's good in classes that sometimes you have the problem where you're winning, and then
you just die to a
you just
burn
die. It's like I was winning, but I ran out of life, which seems like a silly thing to say, but
it actually happens that way.
Yeah. And so this is a really interesting card because it gives more options to those classes for being able to heal. And like arithmetically, it's fairly well costed, so you can compare it to a healing touch, where you pay 3 mana to heal for 8.
2 mana 3/3.
This guy, you pay 3 mana to heal for 8, and then you get a 3/3 for 2 that doesn't cost you a card, which is great value. And if there's lots of decks like Hunter that are kind of all face and run out of cards quickly, and then you have the problem as a Shaman where you stabilize, but you're
play
just
this after you've stabilized, and it kills their next threat and heals 8.
Yeah, and you're just slightly too low, and then their hero power finishes you off 1 turn before you can kill them. And Antique Healbot helps you stabilize against that. It might be good in Shaman as well because you have the problem that in really long games against a warrior, your cards kind of match up so well against theirs, and you can get a totem value a lot of the
you have
time.
Vitality totem there, and they're not going to spend like. The problem with using Shaman as an example is they were given Vitality totem, which is 2 mana and heals for 4 every turn.
Yeah, so we'll discuss Vitality totem when you get to it, but and it has the same kind of value in that against warrior. With a Shaman, your cards match up really well against theirs in the long term, but you have the problem where they can just Alexstrasza you, and then you have to taunt up every turn or you die to
Grommash combo.
Grommash and weapons.
Could you see this in some sort of handlock variant?
The problem with this in handlock is that a lot of the time you don't want to heal.
That's why I'm asking you, because I don't play handlock.
Yeah, so a lot of the time you have the problem against, say, warrior, that your hand is full of cards, and you want to get some of the cards out of your hand so you can draw more cards. So you end up having to play Earthen Ring Farseer, but you don't really want to heal yourself because you want to get down into the Molten range. And because the heal of this is so big, it's difficult to get yourself into like the right life place, and it's also very expensive. So I don't think this card is that good in handlock. But it might be if there's lots of hunters around. Something to note is that this card isn't that good in Shaman if there's lots of Zoo in the meta, because
it doesn't really delay anything, you just still die.
Like, against kind of more board controlling type aggro decks, you actually need to kill all their stuff. And this sets you so far back in tempo on the board that you might have problems with that.
Again, we'll get to Vitality Totem when we get to Shaman, but...
So it depends on... So this is very good in some matchups and very bad in others. But it gives classes a lot of flexibility to play more weapons when they couldn't otherwise, or... it's a really good card. You can recombobulate it.
Wow, that's actually a decent amount of value, recombobulating.
Show was talking about an interesting warrior deck on stream the other day. They played like Antique Healbot and the Shield Maiden and the Iron Juggernaut, which have really good value battle cries, and you can recombobulate them. And
that actually sounds pretty cool.
Actually sounds really interesting. So I'm thinking a bit more about Recombobulator and wondering if Maybe I underrated it a little bit the other day.
We'll have to see. But anyway, anti-Healbot is a decent option in certain decks. We'll have to kind of see where it goes though. But yeah, anyway, Fel Reaver, 5 mana, 8/8. Epic Mech. Whenever your opponent plays a card, discard the top 3 cards of your deck. Now this has a weird history of me because I saw it originally and I was like, oh, the drawback's insane. And I thought about it more and I was like, no, it's not. And then I played against it in Arena and I was like, oh yeah, it is. And we seem to have lost Dapper. See if we can get him back in a reasonable amount of time here. Oh, we have.
Oh, did we
have
some technical problems?
On your end, yes.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm back.
Anyway.
Fel
Reaver. Basically, I've had several opinions of this. The first one I had was that drawback was too much. Then a couple people convinced me. It's like, no, if you play it in aggro, it's fine because you can get it down turn 5 and it's really good. And then you don't like get a massive drawback. And then I played against it, and every single time I played against Fel Reaver, I have just avoided the Fel Reaver and milled him to death before he could actually kill me with an 8/8.
Well, actually, no, I think this card is really good for that reason that. So, in order for the milling to become relevant, so in most games with the kind of aggressive deck that you would play the Fel Reaver in, you are going to win having drawn about 12 or 15 cards.
That's true. So you have like a 15 card leeway.
Yeah. So
roughly.
If they play more than like 5 cards with this guy out, you start to have problems. But there are actually very few decks that can play that many cards in a short enough space of time that the fact that they've just been ignoring your 8/8 isn't going to kill them.
Exactly. Although I will say, do not run this in control decks. For the love of God, don't run this in control decks. You will lose every control mirror possible.
Yeah, because you just lose 6 cards from your deck and then fatigue earlier, and they'll have an easy answer for it.
You'll fatigue before they're even close. They're not even thinking about fatiguing by the time you do.
A potential application of this card is you could play it in the Mech Zoo deck. Gives you like 1 extra big guy that you can play on turn 5. You probably don't need to play Lotheb anymore because Miracle Rogue's gone, and that was the best matchup for that card.
I still think you're going to need to run Lotheb. I think Lotheb is actually getting better.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe that was...
Fel Reaver against Priest is really bad, though, because of Vojin. And Shadow Wrath. So.
That's true. And another consideration is that you can get big game hunted. But it's a huge body. If it gets a hit in, your opponent isn't likely to last very long. And it's also a mech, so if you manage to keep your mech warper around, you can play on turn 4 for even more craziness. It is big game hunterable. That's actually a really relevant.
It depends on how, like Fel Reaver. It feels like Ragnaros now, because it's like depending on how popular this is. Big Game Hunter, it depends on how popular this is for Big Game Hunter to kind of decide how popular that thing is.
Right.
So we'll have to see as far as that is concerned, because I think Fel Reaver, if you play him on turn 5 or 4 possibly in an aggro deck, he can do some work. He cannot be played in mid-range or control decks. You just can't get away with it. The drawback will screw you. Like, even in mid-range decks where normally you wouldn't fatigue, you probably will fatigue with a Fel Reaver. So you can't play it in slow decks. In fast decks, I could definitely see it, and you just kind of gotta hope you're not playing against Priest.
Right.
If you're playing as something like Druid, this is really good though.
This just destroys Druid. I mean, there's a couple of problems with this card. So it might get frozen or peacekeepered or.
This gets peacekeeper. You're just gonna die.
They play like a Sludge Belcher or something. But I mean, you can always just silence it.
Go. Wailing Soul Druid with Fel Reaver.
Yeah, I mean, this might actually make the Wailing Soul deck a bit better because it's a card with a big enough drawback that silencing it is worth it, without having such a big drawback that it's completely useless if you.
And it has a big enough body to the point when you want to run Wailing Soul, so that you can get away with not getting killed by it.
So maybe that will make the Wailing Soul deck a bit better, although I still doubt that it will be worth it.
It'll be better, but whether or not it'll be good is different.
Yeah. So Fel Reaver is a really good card. I definitely expect to see this in quite a few constructed decks.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Alright. On to the Mimiron's Head, known as Voltron Head. 4 mana, 5 mana, 4/5, which is a Yeti. Mech, so it's a mechanical Yeti. At the start of your turn, if you have at least 3 mechs, destroy them all and form Voltron. Now, before we get into this, this is the basis of the first turn 2 kill in Hearthstone that does not involve your opponent. What you have to do is you have to be playing Druid. You go coin Mech Warper into Clockwork Gnome, innervate Mimiron's Head, because it costs 4. Then, on turn 2, you get Voltron, and you get Reversal Switch off the Death Rattle, and you get a 6... You basically swing in for 32 damage on turn 2. The likelihood of that happening is so small, it's just hilarious, but it's going to appear somewhere.
Yeah, so this is a kind of cool card because you can set up the combo, and then if you get off the Voltron, you get to win in extreme style. And Mega Wind Fury is pretty cool.
If you beat a Voltron, by the way, you deserve an achievement.
The kind of very standard, skeptical, competitive pro answer, evaluation of this card is that how often will you have 3 mechs on the board for a turn, including a 4 mana 4/5, and not already have won the game? Is this worth putting the card in your deck?
No idea.
Probably not.
It's like, although the rogue mech deck might be running Conceal.
Yeah,
just to protect
that's
the board.
Something. Although, if you've got cheap mechs on the board like Clockwork Gnome to activate the head, then it might die to AoE. Is this really consistent enough to be played in Constructed? Probably not. But it's worth bearing in mind that unlike most kind of bizarre situational combos,
this does not
the
involve you
worst
playing
case
bad cards.
scenario is not that bad. It's a 5 mana Yeti.
Which is not that bad,
And a
because it's
5
also
mana
a mech.
A 5 mana Yeti is pretty abysmal, but it's not completely useless.
I mean, I've played Black Knight Vanilla.
Right, exactly. The worst case scenario for like Bloodlust is that it sits in your hand and it's a 5 mana spell that does almost nothing. But at least in the worst case scenario for Mimiron's Head, you can just play it as a vanilla creature. So that might make it not completely terrible, but I still think that is not really good enough.
It needs testing, but I don't really think it's that good. Anyway, on to Junkbot. 5 mana 1/5 mech. Whenever a friendly mech dies, gain +2/+2. First of all, if you get this to work, it's insane. However, this does have the Sneed's Old Shredder effect, which is having a kill speed slower than most glaciers.
Yeah, I think Junkbot has like a really cool theme, that it's like scavenging all the other mechs that die and then getting stronger for itself. But I mean, if you think about it, you play this guy, costs 5 mana. So even with 1 buff, you get like a 5 mana 3/7, which isn't worth it. So you need to get 2 buffs for it to start actually achieving value. And its stats aren't really good enough to justify how situational it is that you will actually be able to play it.
And it's really vulnerable to silence.
Yeah, it's really vulnerable to silence. Like, it has 1 attack, so you could theoretically use it with Hobgoblin. But...
Oh my god. No, but the Hobgoblin deck is like, as I said, it looks amazing with Hobgoblin, but the problem is when you don't draw Hobgoblin.
Well, I mean, I don't think this card is even good in the Paladin Hobgoblin deck, but I was kind of theory.
But yeah, it's like, I'd rather have Jeeves over this in that deck. That's
right.
For sure. But anyway, Junkbot, pretty junky. Not that good. Bit too slow. In an arena, you just don't have enough mechs to make them work.
So it will be consigned to the scrap heap.
Yep. Well played. Anyway, Hemmet Nesingwary, 5 mana 6/3, Battlecry, destroy a beast. This was one of the single most random cards that they could have put in this set.
Yeah.
And what's weird is that this will see play in tournaments, in sideboards, not to counter Hunter, but to counter Druid, because Druid at the Claw is a beast now.
Yeah, well, Hemmet Nesingwary has got the giant in his sights.
No, that's the smaller guy who, for some reason, is a better shot.
Oh no, Big Game Hunter's got the beast in his sights, right? So
he's got the giant in his sights.
Okay, so real talk.
Really inaccurate guns.
Hemmet Nesingwary is a 6/3/5.
That's really bad.
And so against Hunter, they have some beasts that you can kill. Against Druid, they now have Druid of the Claw, which you can kill, which is really, really good.
Druid of the Fang.
And potentially Druid of the Fang if that gets played. However,
in every other matchup.
In every other matchup, the best thing you can kill it with is basically a Haunted Creeper.
The value.
Yeah.
Aren't you basically helping your opponent at that point?
Yeah. And having a 6/3 for 5 is extremely bad stats.
Yeah, it's really bad.
You will lose the game because you have this card. So it's extremely niche, and even against Hunter, like it's not that
it
great.
trades with High Mane. It doesn't actually stop it.
Right, you're still going to take the damage from the hyenas. All of the smaller beasts are kind of sticky and awkward.
And draw you cards.
So yeah.
The best thing this is doing as Hunter is probably killing Animal Companion.
Right. Which is pretty good. But so this is kind of like a sideboardy card.
It's a tournament card, I think.
Yeah, it's way too bad when it's not good to actually play it.
The other downside,
unless you're 100% sure that you're going to be playing against.
If you play this against Shaman, again, just like with the 4/3 we went over earlier, you see the guy mousing over his hand, trying to figure out one of 7 different
do I
ways
want
of
a Rock
killing
Biter or Lightning Bolt or Fire Elemental
or Power Mace or Crackle or I could storm it with the rest of his board, or I could use a Flame Tongue Totem. It's like going shopping. As far as the Shaman is concerned,
I mean, I don't know how much lightning is involved in your shopping, Justin. But,
well, when it comes to shamans, there's a lot of lightning involved in shopping. But anyway, so Hemmet Nesingwary, not fantastic in Arena or Constructed.
Yeah. I mean, feedback on this guy in Arena is that there are actually a surprisingly large amount of beasts in Arena. They just show up.
It's still like there's probably better options.
But still probably better options.
But anyway, on to the Madder Bomber, as opposed to the Mad Bomber, which means eventually we're going to get the Maddest Bomber. So this is a 5-mana 5/4 rare with Battlecry, deals 6 damage split between all other characters. I'm going to put this in the same category as Mad Bomber, being better than Mad Bomber in Arena and about as good in Constructed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like a lot of people have said this card's really good in Arena. You basically get the effect of, on average, an Arcane Missiles on your opponent in exchange for an Arcane Missiles on yourself.
With a 5/4.
Yeah, you can get some pretty good value out of this card. It can also be terrible.
I mean, if you're against a pretty large board, then obviously that skews the RNG a lot.
It's a good comeback mechanic. You can. But the problem is that cards that you can't play at all while you're ahead are really, really bad.
I mean, this is no Bomb Lobber. Bomb Lobber gives you extra momentum.
When it comes to the propelling of incendiary devices,
then I would contact the Bomb Lobber Goblin as opposed to the Madder Bomber Goblin.
Yeah, I mean the effect is cool. It's not really justified for the cost. It's a fun card, but in Constructed there are way better options than this.
Agreed. Anyway, on to Blingtron. 5-mana 3/4. Legendary Mech. Battlecry. Equip a random weapon for each player. Before we say anything about this, this was played against me in Arena, and I discovered that he likes his bling. He gives you golden weapons.
Yeah.
So I saw a golden, what was it, the cog hammer? No, not cog hammer. The rogue hammer thing. The wrench.
Oh, the wrench, yeah.
Yeah. So I saw the golden one. It was really cool, and I was just like, wait, what does the golden Blingtron give you? Like normal weapons?
It's actually worth noting that since the new weapons that have been spoiled are actually mostly quite bad to get with Blingtron compared to
well, apart from Power Mace, but Power Mace
some of the better ones. But like even the existence of Power Mace reduces the chance that you'll get Doomhammer or Arcanite Reaper.
That's true. And Hammer doesn't get the battle cry, and
so as a form of weapon kill, Blingtron is like way worse than Harrison. So instead of a draw, you get a weapon, but they also get a weapon
and
that has worse stats,
less relevant,
and you don't win if you get a Doomhammer if they have a Doomhammer.
Because you might give them another one.
Yeah.
The other problem is
Um,
if you can't use this to remove Fiery War Axe or Death Bite or something, because chances are you're probably gonna like if you use on a Death Bite that's already attacked, you have a higher chance of giving them a better weapon than a worse
right.
one.
Um, I mean, and speaking of the kind of symmetrical effects that we've been talking about, uh, this card is like a symmetrical effect that's better for you than it is for your opponent because you get to have the first swing with your weapon.
That's true.
And there is actually a viable application of this card, which is in aggro decks where like their weapon is kind of irrelevant because you're winning any life race and they don't want to hit your
Yeah,
minions
and
with it
by
because they'll
aggro, we're
die.
talking about like not board control tempo aggro, like
No,
hit them in
I
the
mean
face
like so
hard aggro.
if you think about old Backspace Rogue, for example,
Exactly that kind of
um,
deck.
this card might have been played in that because it's a body that they can't ignore, and you might just get a Doomhammer from it and win the game. There are actually like only a couple of really bad weapons that you can get from this. Which is, like Light Justice and Cogmaster Wrench are the only ones. But
Yeah, I mean the problem is
actually,
your
even if you
opponent
get
gets it
Cogmaster
as
Wrench, you
well.
can
This is
have.
something you can attack for 3. So this is the interesting thing about this is that it's gonna have a home in face rush aggro decks.
Yeah, it has synergy with Deadly Poison. You get the Doomhammer and you can put Deadly Poison on it, and Mech Barber, you can.
Yeah, and you can get the new rogue common on it as well. Get your like 8 attack doom hammers. It sounds fun, but
Um,
Blingtron, he's pretty bad in arena though. Just want to say that he's pretty bad in arena. You're
Yeah, and
basically
like
moving your
as a
fate forward
value
here.
card, it's quite bad. But you could think of it more as kind of like a Cold Light Oracle, where if you think about just the value, it's bad, but you can use it to get this just big
Yeah.
advantage. Where
The value is bad because if you're running an aggro deck, their 2 cards probably can like over time will be better than yours, but the point is you can use yours immediately and you want to end the game as fast as possible. Blingtron's kind of
right,
the same, where
yeah.
their weapon will be better over time because they can supplement it with better things. However, you get the extra swings and you also get some extra damage in.
So I actually don't think it's completely inconceivable that we could see this card in a really strong constructed deck,
In an
but we
aggro
might not
deck.
because it might just
But
the stars might not align
there
properly
might just be
for.
a bunch of tempo decks, and if there's a bunch of tempo decks, the face rush aggro decks are looking really stupid.
Right. Yeah, like if Zoo is the best deck, then this card probably not be
Yeah,
good.
or other tempo decks like Rogue Tempo and things like that. But anyway, on to Mogor the Ogre. 6 mana 7/6. All minions have the Ogre effect. You could say it's Ogre for you. Now, I did play against this once. This was on the first day of the arena thing. I think it was Friday? Was it Friday? But anyway, that's the first time I played, I think. But so I had 3 guys with 6 damage between them. I try and attack Morgor with all 3. They all miss him and hit the face. Then he tries to attack me when I'm on 10 life, and it misses and hits a 1/1. It's just like
Mogor is fun because you can get some crazy games. There's minions going all over the place. No
we're
one
both
knows
agreed
who
he's
they're going
not
to
good,
attack.
right? He's just not good, but he's
But
hilarious.
it's a hilarious troll card. In constructed, it's worse than Boulder Fist Ogre because you can get Big Game Hunter now. He has 6 health,
Well, it's a
and
bad
Boulder Fist
card.
Ogre is pretty bad.
The main thing to think about with Morgor is he's not supposed to be good.
But yeah, the goal is not to be good. The goal is to
Be hilarious.
yeah, and it succeeds in that goal.
Yep. So, Toshley, 6 mana, 5/7, Battle Cry and Death Rattle. Add a spare part to your hand. It's legendary. Now, we actually caught Lineman, who's one of our teammates, playing this just before we started recording. He played it in a couple games. It was actually really good in Arena because stats and draw. The main thing about this card, though, is in Constructed, is it a replacement for Karen? Because Karen is too slow. That's
Right.
the main question here.
Toshley is really incredible, actually. So it's like a Boulder Fist Ogre. The difference between 5 and 6 attack is not that much. 5/7 is a really, really good size. It runs over all the common mid-game 5 health
And you
minions.
get 2 spare parts, which is probably equivalent to about 1 card.
If they play a Lower Theb or a Sludge Belcher, and you can respond with Toshley, and it's really good. Similar to why Doomguard is so annoying, because it's got such great stats. But the issue that this card has is that it does have to compete with other 6-drops, which is one of the most competitive slots in the game. There's so many good ones in the decks that would want to play this. Is it really better than Can and the Black Knight and Sylvanas?
I think the main debate is between Sylvanas and Black Knight because Karen has already started being dropped because he is incredibly slow. Like,
yeah.
Karen has a habit of you play him and then your opponent's just like, Sludge Belcher, ignore him.
Yeah, right, and then they can't even kill off any of their 5 health minions.
Yeah.
Toshley has a quite big advantage there.
4 and 5
So
attack is actually a big difference at the moment.
yeah, maybe you'll see this card in Druid as just a huge 6-drop that can kind of get a bit of extra value with the spare parts.
Druid's actually a bit light on 6 drops now that I think about it.
I mean, no one's light on 6 drops, but
relatively.
That's where I think this place would fit the best.
Probably. Like, you can ramp it out and you get massive value out of it.
So it's very, very close to the threshold of being good enough to be played and constructed.
The question is, which side of that threshold is it on?
Yeah, it might be good enough. We'll see.
We'll have to see. Piloted Sky Golem, 6 mana, 6/4, epic, Death Rattle, summon a 4-cost minion, mech. This is the big brother of the Piloted Shredder, and for anyone who's been playing Arena recently, this is miserable to play against.
Yeah, for the same reasons that we were talking about with Piloted Shredder. It's quite a bit worse than Piloted Shredder because
it costs more.
A, it costs more, and B, the things that can drop from it are almost all worse than Yeti. Some of them quite a lot worse than Yeti.
There's no catastrophically bad ones though. Like there's no Doomsayers and there's no Captain's Parrots. But
there are a lot of Twilight Drakes and Defenders of Argus.
The worst one I think is Twilight Drake and Defender. There's a couple other. There are some really good ones. Like you can get Pit Lord, Water Elemental.
You can get Pit Lord. You can get Piloted Shredder.
You can get Piloted Shredder. You can get Pit Lord. I mean, like, if you go Piloted Sky Golem into Piloted Shredder into Mech Warper and then you chain back up, that's just funny.
So, the bottom line with this card is it's very, very similar to Can. It's probably a bit worse in isolation just because while the 6 attack is quite relevant and you can actually kill stuff with it when you play it, the 4 health means it can die to a lot of stuff, and the second half is usually going to be worse than a Bane.
Yeah.
But it is a mech.
And it hits hard. Hitting harder is actually really relevant in the decks that will want a mech.
Right. So if you're playing Mech Warper in your deck and you really wanted a powerful, sticky 6-drop, then it's conceivable that you could play Piloted Sky Golem. It will probably see some play.
It will. It will see some play. I mean, it'll obviously see some play. The real question is how much.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good card. We'll have to see just how good, though. But anyway. On to Gazlowe. Gazlowe is a 6 mana, 3/6 legendary with whenever you cast a 1 mana spell, add a random mech to your hand. Now, this is quite funny for me because for a while we've been trying to think of like a rogue deck that could potentially run the old Gadgetzan, the 5 mana version. And you could get all the spare parts and then refill your hand, and we weren't even sure if it was that good, but it was like, well, might as well try it. Gazlowe is the actual refill on mechs card, but the question is, like, 3/6 for 6, he's hard to kill, and he works with Conceal, which you may even run in a mech deck anyway, because it protects your mech warpers and things like that. The question is he good enough?
Right. I mean, I think, so there's lots of good things about this card. It's a 3/6, which is a lot better size than a 4/4. If your opponent wants to kill it immediately, and they're going to have to.
It's a big investment.
They have to put in a lot more effort than they do to kill an Auctioneer.
Look at Water Elemental, for example. A late game Water Elemental is still a pain in the neck to kill.
Right. And I think the niche that this card kind of fits in, there's a couple of ways that you could play it. So you could play it in Rogue, where you've got Conceal and Deadly Poison and spare parts potentially, and Preparation on the 2 new 4 mana spells would also work. And you could play it in Shaman because you've got all the 1 mana Lightning Bolts and Rock Biters.
Kill 2/3s.
And Earth Shocks. Plus potential spare parts. And it does kind of solve that problem in Shaman, where Shaman did used to run Gadgetzan back in the day because they had a problem with
a long time ago. The reason they stopped
having a million
was because it died so easily.
Yeah.
This doesn't die very easily.
The problem where in control matchups you have all these 1 mana spells that get stuck in your hand late game, and there's nothing good to use them on, and so you can cycle them with this.
1 Gazlowe, 1 Neptulon, is that enough draw? I think it is, by far.
An important question is how good is a random mech? And so I think one of the big strengths of Miracle Rogue is that you use Gadgetzan, you play a bunch of cheap cards, and you get a bunch more cheap cards that you can play really quickly. Whereas, if you play this and then you fill your hand up with a bunch of Force Tank Maxes and Mech Thermoplugs, could be awkward for you.
But then you
The
also
mech is probably
like,
going to be worse than you kind of deck.
but if it's that late in the game, like a Force Tank Max is not good. But because you're probably on turn like 8 or 9 at this point, you can still play it as a ridiculous threat.
Right.
Like
Um,
there's all the good 2-drops. There's Fel Reaper.
yeah, I mean, you can get the class max with this, which is significant. Um, but the bottom line in Gazlowe, I think, is that 6 mana is a lot to pay. It's quite hard to build a deck around because
You only play one.
it's a legendary. Um, and so because it costs 6 mana, you won't be getting a good combo off with this card into the 7, 8, and 9. And so it's not really consistent enough to make a good constructed deck with. But
Yeah, I agree. I think you actually made a good point about the Shaman thing. Mana Tide Totem has always been awkward in Shaman because it doesn't really do anything on its own, and it just has situations where it literally does nothing. So, but with the 2 new like, you could run Gazlowe because there's a bunch of 1 mana spells you always have in your hand roaming around, and the other problem with Shaman is that you end up with weird situations where you actually have to deliberately increase your minion count because you just have games with 10 spells in your hand.
yeah, when you don't have anything to play, and then
the
warrior is just staring at a board full of 0 attack totems and not taking any damage, and they can just wait forever to assemble the right
and then you
combo
end up
to
with
kill
these
you.
really dumb games where the shaman wins anyway because he just dealt with all the threats the warrior has, but also went to fatigue every single time, and it's really awkward. But the thing about Gazlowe is that I actually think that if you're running a shaman deck with a pretty high spell count, which a lot of them are, drawing a minion is actually better than drawing a card from your deck. Because it might be a spell, and then that's really bad if you have a bunch of spells in your hand.
That's quite a good point.
But the average mech is actually pretty decent, I think. Like, the main point is it's decent to the point when it's playably decent. Like, there's a couple bad ones, but at least they're, like, most of them are playably decent.
Yeah, the bottom line on Gazlowe is that it's an interesting card, but it's probably too expensive to see.
Clockwork Giant. That is one of the worst ones you can possibly get. But we'll have to see. I think if he sees play, it will be in some really slow control deck. If he sees play, we'll have to see. He's one of those cards which fits in the really hard to predict, needs testing zone. And I think whoever opens him first is gonna have the responsibility of trying him.
Yeah, I'm gonna hedge a little bit less and say that this card is probably not very good.
I'm gonna try him anyway. I don't think he's. I mean, I actually said like. He does not really work in combos. He works with some sort of weird control deck, but we'll have to see where. Anyway, Dr. Boom, 7 mana, 7/7, Battlecry. Summon 2 Boom Bots. Now, the Boom Bots are all the way down here, and they are 1 mana, 1/1s, mechs. Death Rattle, deal 1 to 4 damage to a random enemy. Now, I had the privilege, or pain, of playing against this in Arena earlier today, and I actually had a Demolisher on the board, which killed one of the Boom Bots, and then that killed the Demolisher.
Brilliant.
That was not entertaining. But Dr. Boom is an absolute monster bomb in Arena. There's so many, like, out of all the legendaries, he's one of the really, really insane bomby legendaries that came out of the set in Arena. But as far as constructed goes, before you open up on this one, Dakar, I actually think that he was feasibly playable until the card next to him was spoiled, which is Troggzor.
Right, yeah, because I was about to say the same thing. So Dr. Boom has this cool niche where it's kind of like a mini Onyxia or mini Scenarios, where it's just a really solid 7-drop, of which there are not many, which is like difficult to remove in a single target spell because it spawns these 2 Boom Bots that are quite useful as well. And 7 is a really empty mana slot in most control decks. And if you wanted the kind of 7-drop that you could play onto an empty board and it'd be good, unlike Baron Geddon, then Dr. Boom would be quite good, albeit a bit slow. However, you just alluded to Troggzor, which is a 7-drop that you can play on an empty board, which is considerably better than
It's like,
Dr.
if
Boom.
you want value, you just play Troggzor.
And
we should probably
doesn't die to Big Game Hunter,
we
which
should
is
probably just
crazy.
segue into Troggzor so we can compare them since they're right next to each other. Troggzor is a 7 mana 6/6. He's called Troggzor the Earthinator, another mouthful. and he is a Trogg. So whenever your opponent casts a spell, you summon a 3/5 for 4 Trogg, the Burly Rockjaw Trogg. So basically, the main comparison here is that one of them dies to Big Game Hunter. They probably get around the same value on average, because sometimes they just won't cast a spell, but one of them dies to Big Game Hunter.
Right. I mean, Dr. Boom has the advantage that if you're behind on board, Troggzor is not that great.
That's true.
Because it's just going to get traded into.
But if you're trying to get a catch-up thing, I'd rather just
if you're far enough behind on board that they can kill a Troggzor, then you're probably far enough behind on board that you're just going to die if you play Dr. Boom.
Just kill you.
But I think Dr. Boom is quite a good card, but
just not good enough.
The Troggzor is just if your opponent has to cast a spell on Troggzor to kill it, you basically win the game.
There is a interaction or a bug, we actually don't know which one, with mind control. So keep that in mind, because I did draft Troggzor at one point, and if you mind control him, what happens is that, I don't know if this is intentional, but this is what happens in terms of ruling. The spell comes from your opponent, steals Troggzor,
and then it gets a 3/5.
He triggers, but then he doesn't make a 3/5 because his own owner cast the spell.
Okay.
So nothing happens. So they just steal the 6/6.
That seems pretty reasonable.
I don't know if that's how that's supposed to work, but that's how it does work. So keep that in mind.
You do make the point that it is quite vulnerable to mind control, so if a lot of priests are running mind control, but it comes down on 10/7, so it's not a big deal.
It's not that. It's like less vulnerable to mind control than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, this deck won't be that great in Warrior, for example, because Warrior, you kind of lose the board early on, and then you kind of want to play your big guys to take back the board. And Troggzor is bad if you don't have the board.
That you actually, with Troggzor and Fel Reaver and Iron Juggernaut and such, and you actually can feasibly build a Warrior control deck which literally only has 2 BGH targets, one of which deals 12 damage when you play it, and the other one does 15.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you're going to have 2 BGH targets in your deck, it doesn't hurt you that much to have 4 or 5.
Yeah, but then it's like they both deal absurd amounts immediately, so you might as well just make the Big Game Hunter actively bad against your deck, because by the time it does have a target, it's too late. Is the point?
Perhaps you're right.
But anyway, so evaluation here. Dr. Boom is a good card, but the problem is the bar when it comes to constructed is really high. So...
Yeah, I mean, so the problem with Troggzor is what deck does Troggzor fit into? Druid is a good deck,
yeah.
where
but they have so many 7s.
yeah, exactly. Where you kind of have a lot of guys that you want to play when you have the board, and then put pressure on control decks and make it difficult for them to deal with it. But 7/7 is your Ancient of Law turn, and do you really want to play a 3rd 7 drop?
Actually, if you're cutting a Rag for a Troggzor, that's still a low in curve. And Rag wasn't even that good. You just ran it in some Druid decks because it was like a big extra, like, finisher punch thing. So,
this is true.
Like, if you're lowering the curve, it doesn't actually matter that much. Priest could make use of Troggzor a lot. Like, because you can buff it up with Power Word Shield if you need to. There's Dark Cultist. There's the fact you can heal it, so killing it without using a spell is just a pain in the neck.
I mean, the problem with Priest is that you kind of...
They don't
A, you
have
might
a
not have the
7 drop
board,
at this point.
and B, you generally don't want to be playing like huge late game minions.
Well, the point is, like, unlike Ragnaros and Ysera, it comes down as like a way of securing your board position. Because
That's true.
it has like a pseudo Loatheb effect. They don't really want to cast spells. So, I don't know. I think it will see play somewhere. I think Troggzor is a little overhyped right now. A lot of people are saying it's like, oh my god, it's like the best legendary in the set. We'll get there. But anyway, Troggzor is...
Right, so suppose that your Troggzor gets fireballed.
You get a 3/5.
It's basically a worse can that you paid 7 mana for. But the difference, obviously, is that they can't just ignore it because...
You also can't hex it or polymorph it.
This is true.
So there's upsides. Now, I mean, you're getting extra for your extra mana. But the question is,
and if Ken always got fireballed, it would be amazing.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing is like how it's less vulnerable to silence is another thing. But the question is, how fast is the metagame going to be? Because I think 8 mana is almost out of the question at this point. Like, it doesn't have a massive battle cry. It's just almost out of the question. It's too slow. Seven
Right.
mana though, we need to see how fast the format is to see whether or not you can get away with 7 drops that don't, draw cards or heal you.
Right.
So anyway, so Doctor Boom probably not good enough. Troggzor we shall have to see. So onto the Fel Reaper. Now this is kind of a funny roundabout situation here, where at first we disagreed, and my argument for why I liked Fel Reaper was actually legitimate until the rest of the set came out and the format turned out to be way faster than I thought it was. So I think we agree on this one now. 8 mana,
Right.
6/9, and when it damages a minion, it deals that damage to the things next to it. And I still think that if the metagame slows down enough, this is good. The problem is that this metagame looks like the kind of metagame where if you spend a turn playing an 8-drop, you die.
Right. So yeah, this card is. I mean, it's got the effect is kind of cool and flashy. And the body is 6/9. It's pretty solid.
Very good against Druid. If Druid is very good, this is very good. But
yeah, this
if
card is
Priest
pretty good
is
against
very
Druid.
good.
But yeah, I mean, it costs 8 mana, right? And for your big late game bombs, you want one of two things. Either you want it to immediately get value the turn you play it, like a Ragnaros.
Or an Echelon.
Worst case scenario with Ragnaros, it dies straight away, but at least it killed something. Or hit them for 8 in the face. Cleared out that all-important healing totem. Fel Reaper, on the other hand, it comes down. So either they do something when they come into play, or
They have to do
they're
something
extremely difficult to
ridiculous
remove.
if they live. Yeah,
Scenarios, for example, is really good because it's
It
so
does
resistant to
both.
removal.
it's
they-
resistant to removal and it protects you when you play it.
They execute the scenarios, but then there's still some trees left over.
Fear of the trees.
So it's hard to kill him one hit. Fel Reaper, on the other hand, has the problem that it neither has an immediate effect. It's not very sticky. It can just die to an execute or some kind of hard removal hex.
Everything dies to Hex pretty much, though. Out of the big stuff, apart from my scenarios. I mean, I think Fel Reaper is more comparable to something like what's it called, Tyrion, where Tyrion has always been one of those cards where people have been trying to figure out why Tyrion just doesn't break Paladin Control and make it like the best deck ever, and the reason is because it's like it doesn't do anything when you play it, and sure it does something when it dies, but generally if you really think about it, most of the games you win with Tyrion, it doesn't die. Because it's a 6/6 with Taunt and Divine Shield. So Fel Reaper kind of fits in that slot where it's just like, it might be the final straw that breaks the camel's back, which is actually kind of weird since it's a big Harvest Golem. But I'm not really sure whether or not it's going to be worth it. It does need the right metagame. I think, again, if the metagame becomes like a lot of Druids, then Fel Reaper is very good. But then they have the hard removal now.
Yeah, I mean, if the metagame is really Druid heavy, then you want to be playing big bodies. But is Fel Reaper necessarily the best big body that you can find?
It kills pretty much everything in Druid. It kills Troggzor as well.
That's true.
I think we're pretty much agreed on this. It's meta dependent.
I don't think this card is very good. I'm pretty sure it won't really see much constructed play for those reasons.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Although I do think that this is by far the best legendary in Arena they've ever released. Like, you play it, and then if it lives a turn, you win the game. I played against Fel Reaper, and I was terrified of it, and I realized I had exact lethal, and I was celebrating.
I still think Tyrion is probably better in Arena, but
yeah, but that's a class legendary.
Right.
So I guess that's kind of cheating.
Maybe Ragnaros is better, but the thing about Arena is that so sometimes if you play a big guy, they just have a bunch of small minions on the board, and there's no way that you can kill all of them in time to prevent them from killing you. And
that's why Rag was, I don't think, is as good as Fel Reaper in Arena, because from playing this format a lot, it seems a lot more like there's less whiplashy cards. Like Flame Strike seems to be better than it has been before, because there's not that many ways of clearing the board besides Flame Strike, because it does 4 damage. So you need a whiplashy card, and I think Fel Reaper is absolutely insane if you get it, because you just play it on a board when they have like 2 guys, and then they just can't really. If they can't kill it immediately with some sort of hard removal, they pretty much just lose. So.
Yeah, that's true.
But anyway, it's a bit of a moot point debating how powerful a 6/9 for 8 that does splash
I mean,
damage.
the other kind of problem with Fel Reaper is you want to hit minions with it, right?
Yeah.
But usually when you spend all this mana putting out this big guy, you want to use it to go for the face and start actually killing your opponent.
So anyway,
so that's an awkward tension. But let's move on.
We have 4 cards left in this part of the set review. First one, Force Tank Max. 8 mana, that is a hilarious name, by the way. 8 mana, 7/7, common, mech, divine shield. Bad and constructed, because bad and constructed. And in Arena, this has been surprisingly okay as a one-off.
Yeah, so a lot of people have been surprised by how non-mediocre this card is in Arena. And some people have even considered that it might be better than War Golem. However, in Constructed, this card is awful because... it dies to Big Game Hunter, it dies to pretty much all removal without doing anything. It can be ignored and kill you, so it's useless in aggro matchups.
It's not even like... It's like we just talked about Fel Reaper, where it has a draw where it doesn't do anything immediately, and then you compare it to Force Tank, and it's like, what does Force Tank do on the next turn? Kills 1 guy, maybe. It's just not worth it.
So, yeah, there are far better options for 8 mana.
Exactly. Speaking of far better options for 8 mana, and I don't mean this is a better option, I mean just same logic. Sneed's Old Shredder. 8 mana, 5/7, legendary, death rattle, summon a random legendary minion, and it's a mech. This thing is so slow that Cairn treats it like a Cairn. Like, you just go straight past it. It's just like... This thing is so ridiculous. What makes it even worse, the whole value behind this is that the death rattle goes off. But it has 7 life.
Yeah, so...
You can't trade it enough to get the death rattle going without your opponent helping you, and they're just never going to attack it.
Right. So... Actually, Jotto, could you give me a second?
Yeah, go for it. But anyway, so as far as Sneed's Old Shredder goes, in Constructed, I don't really see it ever. As in ever, ever, ever. As far as Arena goes, though, 8 mana, 5/7 that summons something when it dies is actually fairly legitimately good, because the biggest things in Arena are usually Boulder Fist Ogres. I mean, there is Force Tank, which is probably the largest thing there. And obviously there's things like Ironbark Protector, which are bigger. But it still gets value. But in Constructed, it's just so slow. And this is definitely one of the more overhyped cards when it did come out at first. A lot of people saying it's really good. I actually think it's just like one of the worst 8-drops you can possibly have. It's not a Gruul level, but not many things are at Gruul level as far as how bad they are as an 8-drop. So I will say, Sneed's Old Shredder, I would not even play it. Like, if you want an 8-drop, try Rag, try Fel Reaper, try going smaller with Troggzor. Just go down 1 mana cost. Even just Rag is better. And there's a bunch of class legendaries which function as just better late game drops. And you've got things like Ysera. Like, think about it this way. Ysera is actually equally as slow because it costs 1 more mana. Has roughly the same kind of stat total, but you get cards out of it that are fast. Like Ysera Awakens and Nightmare and things like that. But then on the other side of things, that pretty much wins you the game immediately. This thing, if it's silenced, is not that good. And Ysera, if it's silenced, is absolutely ridiculously hard to get rid of. A 4/12 is way better than a 5/7, and it's only 1 mana difference. So, I'm not really sure whether or not this will see any play whatsoever. And I will try it out if I get it, but most likely this will end up as being one of the many legendaries from the set that ends up as dust. Before Dapper comes back and gives his opinions, I also just gone to Mech Engineer Thermoplug. It's a 9 mana, 9/7 mech with whenever an enemy minion dies, summon a Leper Gnome. This just seems bad to me. Big Game Hunter kills it. It costs 9 mana, that's a lot. And its effect isn't even that good. Whenever an enemy dies, summon a Leper Gnome. That's not very good at all, in my opinion. The mech type doesn't really help it that much. And Leper Gnomes are pretty bad compared to something like Kel'Thuzad. Better stat total. Well, better stat total for cost, better stat distribution, costs less, more powerful effect. I don't really see how Mech Engineer is anything comparable to KT, and KT isn't even that good. like Kel'Thuzad is not even that good as a card, whereas Mech Engineer is just absolutely miserable when compared to it. So I don't really know where that leaves the Mech Engineer. As far as Arena goes, I would not even enjoy picking it. It's okay, but it costs 9 mana, which is a lot. It's playable, I guess, but I don't know. You have to have some pretty bad legendaries to pick from, like Millhouse Mana Storm and Loreworker Cho or something like that to pick Thermoplug. So not a particularly good card as far as Arena goes either. Now the last card out of the neutrals is Clockwork Giant. 12 mana, 8/8. Epic. Costs 1 less for each card in your opponent's hand. It is a mech. And it's a reverse Mountain Giant. So the point is that Mountain Giant triggers based on your cards, whereas Clockwork Giant is based on their cards. Now, me and Dapper have actually talked about this on a spoiler show before. So basically, the whole thing behind this is that in a weird sideboardy tournament thing, you could actually run this to beat Handlock. The problem is that in ladder, that's not reliable because most people are running aggro or some kind of mid-rangey deck. So they won't have enough cards in your hand for you to even cast this most of the time. Because if they have 2 or less cards in their hand, it's so hard to cast this, and it's just so ridiculously difficult. There's not enough support for a mill deck yet, so you can't really go for that kind of strategy yet. You can't just make them draw a bunch and then put down an 8/8. This is actually pretty bad if you get it off Gazlowe with the spare parts. You get your Clockwork Giant and you just can't play it. Although I guess if you do get to play it, which could happen at some point, it is an 8/8. But in that case, it's getting it for free as opposed to putting it in your deck, which is just bad. And that's kind of a concept which has come up with Web Spinner. So Web Spinner? Yeah, Web Spinner, which is if you get something for free, it's way better than actually putting it in your deck. So things like Silverback Patriarch will go off Web Spinner just because it's a taunt, as opposed to putting Silverback in your deck, which no one would ever do. And it's kind of similar with Clockwork Giant and Mech Engineer, which kind of puts Gazlowe's value up a little bit because you get them for free off other 1 mana spells. But anyway, so the last row of neutrals is not fantastic, so to say. I mean, we had Fel Reaver, Troggzor, Gazlowe, which were all okay, and then the really high cost stuff just isn't that good. There's actually a kind of a trend of there just not being that many really good legendaries. Like if we just go down here, ones that I'm keeping an eye on are like Troggzor, maybe Gazlowe, Toshley, maybe Mimiron's Head, and that's pretty much it out of the neutrals. And as far as epics goes, I'm only really paying attention to not really Hobgoblins, just if I get it, it'd be cool. Maybe Recombobulator and Fel Reaver, Sky Golem. And that's it. That's pretty much it as far as neutral epics and legendaries goes. There's not really much to choose from, and from a player's perspective, that is a good thing because it means you don't have to spend that much to get the neutral cards you want. I mean, each class has a legendary, and each class has 2 epics, I think. Let me just check. Let's see, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, what, really? 3 rares, 2 commons, 2 epics, 1 legendary. That's a weird distribution. I didn't even realize that. Yeah, that is 3 rares, 2 commons. Weird. But anyway, so the main point is that each class also has 2 epics and legendaries, so that's kind of puts up the dust cost a little bit, but there's still a bunch of extra rares and commons. So I think most of the cards in this set that are actually playable you can get for a very, very small amount of dust, especially from the neutrals, and it also means that the neutrals have impacted Arena a lot more. I've been drafting this format a decent amount. I've gone 12 wins and 11 wins and 9, I think, at one point. So I've been drafting this a lot. Keep in mind, you have your little draft coupon thing, so be sure to actually get that. But the format has been impacted a lot because commons. There's so many commons.
Sorry, Josh, I'm very sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I've been through.
You still here?
What? Hello? Dapper sound appears to have broken.
Hello?
We have a broken Dapper. Yep, Dapper sound has been broken, so...
What? Oh, you having some mic problems?
No. No. This is on video. This is just funny to me.
I can hear bits and pieces. But like...
Oh my god, this is really, really funny from my perspective.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Anyway, so what I've basically done was gone through Sneed's Old Shredder, Thermoplug, and Clockwork. So Sneed's Old Shredder, really, 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 really slow. Not really worth playing if instructed. Same with Mech Engineer and Clockwork.
Oh, so you went ahead and did it without me. I'm sorry I'm disappearing.
No, it's fine. But anyway,
I just assumed you'd kind of like cut that bit out, but then we could continue. But
no, I just went on anyway. But anyway, so we already did all 3 of those cards on a previous Boiler show, so I know we're pretty much agreed on it.
Yeah.
So Sneed's Old Shredder, too slow. Mech Engineer, just bad. And Clockwork Giant, too situational. That's a basic sum up there.
Yeah. So that was quite unprofessional, but I guess I am not a professional, so...
I'm the one who has to hold by a professional standard. It's okay on your end. But anyway, that's pretty much rounding it out for the neutrals. So as far as legendaries, I was just saying, as far as legendaries and epics goes, there really isn't that many really good ones. Like there's 2 legendaries that I'm keeping it. The 3 legendaries I'm keeping an eye on, which are Troggzor.
Wait, Jotto, are you still talking?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Oh, now you're back. No, now you gotta go. I wonder if it's my end.
I think it's Skype. Give me a second. Technical issues 101.
Turn off, turn on again.
Yeah. Is it working now?
Seems to be.
Alright, but anyway, so what I was basically saying was that legendaries and epics, there really don't seem to be that many neutral legendaries and epics, which I actually even want.
Yeah, that's very true.
There's like
which is good.
Toshley, Troggzor, maybe Gazlowe, maybe. And then maybe Reek and Bobby later. And
yeah.
Sky Golem. That's it.
Fel Reaper is an epic. And so is like piloted Sky Golem, which might be useful.
But it's pretty cheap as far as the neutrals goes. Which means it impacts Arena a lot more as well.
Yeah.
So, that's fine on that end. But anyway, so that has been all of the neutrals. We still have all the class cards to go, which will be in 9 separate videos.
Yeah, we've got still a long way to go.
Yeah, we've got quite a bit more to do on our end of things. But anyway, thanks all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, put it in the comment section below. Thanks for joining me once again, Dapper.
Thanks for having me, Jotto.
Saying that 9 more times today. Count them. 9. I'll put them in a playlist, by the way, for anyone who's really annoyed about that. I'll just put them in a playlist. The set review, 11 videos.
Yeah. And if we're not sick of each other by the end of today,
then that's impressive. Anyway.
Okay, brilliant.
Yep. See you guys in the next bit.